I will call the meeting to order at 7:00 p.m. Jennifer, can we please have a roll call?
Ms. Christian?
Here.
Mr. Globinger? Ms. Oliver?
Here.
Mr. Patel?
Here.
Ms. Spector Bishop?
Here.
Ms. Unical? Ms. Shu?
Here.
Thank you, and we have a quorum. Moving on to the consent agenda, are there any items that anyone would like to have removed from the consent agenda for discussion in new business? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Maura, seconded by
I'll second.
Jamie. And a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Christian?
Yes.
Ms. Ms. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Ms. Spector Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Shu?
Yes.
Great. Moving on to public comments. It looks like we have members of the public here to make comment this evening. As a reminder, community members wishing to share thoughts about any matter concerning the Northbrook Public Library may do so during public comments. The board typically does not immediately respond to public comments or engage in open dialogue, but we are actively listening to your thoughts, comments, and suggestions. Speakers will be recognized in the order they signed into the meeting. Visitors may speak for up to 5 minutes. Members of the public shall not speak a second time and may not give their time to another. Public comment section will not exceed 30 minutes, I think we're good there, except with consent of the Board of Trustees. Please know that the board is committed to allowing time for all who want to speak to do so. Bryce, do you have anything?
No.
Thank you. Lee Goodman?
Is it appropriate to speak now or when the agenda item under 8 meeting room policy is called?
We do public comment now. We don't do public comment during agenda items.
Good, well, thank you.
Although you're welcome to stay for the entirety of the meeting, even though we do public comment now. Yeah. We hope people do.
As to number 8.2, meeting room and policy procedure, I and a few others were here a few months ago to talk about this issue. And I now see that you're going to be doing a much more extensive review of this policy, if I understand. So the first thing I'd like to say is, if at all possible, I would like to be part of that stakeholder review process. I don't know what it takes to become a part of that, but I'm letting you know now, and let me know if there's something I need to do to sign up for that. I wasn't sure from your announcement whether you're going to be reviewing the policy with regard to all of the meeting rooms, including the auditorium, or not looking at the auditorium. I hope you look at the auditorium, because right now, as I understand it, it stands alone as the one facility you do not allow the public to use without charge. From my understanding of your policy right now, it would cost more than $1,000 for anyone to use that room, because you have a 3-hour minimum, $150 an hour, 2 staff members at $120. Having done a little bit of organizing in this community, I can tell you that simply is prohibitive. That's all there is to it, unless you're maybe a movie impresario or something. So why is this important? Because there's no other similar facility to use, and actually, other than your meeting rooms, the small ones, there's pretty much nowhere else where people can get together and talk in this whole town. The village is not available after 4:15, except on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's never open on the weekends to use their rooms. The schools are like armed fortresses. You can't even get into those at any time, so they have no rooms. The Park District charges by the hour for each of its rooms. You're all that we've got if people want to get together and talk. Why is this important? Because we're about to enter in a period of time in our history. Well, just last night, our president warned us we may be in danger of losing our democracy. Sounds pretty extreme. I didn't expect him to say it, but he did. As far as I'm concerned, if there's anything that can save us, it's the ability to get together with our neighbors and talk to each other openly and freely. Now, I know you were contacted by the ACLU. I don't ask at this point why it was you made the decision you made earlier to restrict the use of your facility. I suspect you got some bad advice. I suspect you might have gotten a little spooked, maybe a little bit intimidated by people who claimed to represent a whole part of the community. Whatever the reason was, now you're taking the opportunity to review this, and I think that is absolutely appropriate and wonderful. But I know that since the ACLU is there, you'll probably be consulting with their attorneys. I'm a retired attorney, and I want to say there's a couple of ways to ask an attorney a question about this. You could say to the attorney, is there anything stopping us from making these rooms freely available to the entire public without impediment? Any competent attorney would say, no, you can certainly do that. Or you could say, what can we get away with? What kind of policies can we put in place that will pass constitutional muster, at least arguably, that may appear to be facially neutral, but will actually place a burden selectively on certain groups? That's what I think you shouldn't be doing. I will look forward to participating in the stakeholder review. I'm hoping that not only can you keep your meeting rooms generally open, that you will then once again allow people to use the auditorium for free, just like you used to do. If someone doesn't want to use your fancy audiovisual equipment, they don't need a technician. If they want to just come and use the facility, there's no reason whatsoever why you shouldn't allow them to just walk in and use it, just like you used to. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Nancy Goodman?
I share the same sentiments and just would also like to say that the stakeholder meetings I'd like to be involved in also.
Thank you very much. Moving into staff reports. Kate?
So a couple things I wanted to mention, and that is that the State of the Village, we are again partnering with the Chamber to offer that here at the library as on January 31st at 9 a.m. I mentioned in the packet that if any board members are interested in attending, just let me know, and we will get you signed up for that. We are always very excited to partner with the Chamber and appreciate that the Chamber Director thinks it's important that not only businesses can access this, but also that the community at large can participate in it. So we're excited. This will be the third year that we're hosting it here at the library, and are thrilled to be doing so because we think it's really important in the, especially well, every year is an election year, but to give people an opportunity to meet with their elected officials and to hear directly from them. So we're excited to be able to offer this opportunity. I also would like to mention that we do have our first auditorium rental, and that as Mr. Goodman just pointed out, there is a fee associated with it. I wanted to share with the board since this is a new policy. So the group that is doing it is bringing in an outside presenter to do a Q&A with, and they will be booking the room for 4 hours at a cost of $1,130, which is on a cost recovery model so that we can not make any money, but simply have a net neutral in terms of cost for the event, which will include technicians, equipment that they will be using in the space, as well as the general hourly cost. So after the event in February, we'll be sure to give the board an update on that. We had, as many of you are aware, a very successful finals cafe that just finished. We had over 1,300 students come and partake of some of the refreshments that were sponsored by the Friends of the Library. And I want to just take a moment to thank all of the board members that came and helped with serving pizza, which included Stacy as our reigning pizza serving queen, Maura, Nimesh, and Janet. And I know staff were very much appreciative to have the board there help with serving, and students were really wonderful. We are very fortunate in this community to have students that not only want to come to the library, but are very grateful for all of the services that we offer. And we are always thrilled to be able to offer them a space to come together and study, which I think is really important. They certainly studied a lot harder than I ever did. I also wanted to thank everyone that came to the ribbon cutting that we had here in Civic. As the board knows, the Civic Foundation made a grant of $25,000 to the library to allow us to turn this into a hybrid meeting room, and we had a wonderful ribbon cutting ceremony along with a little demo of the space. And while we were in this space in November, we were still having some last minute punch list things. And so I asked Kelly today to share with the board some of the wonderful new features that this room allows, that we've already had multiple people booking the room and using the new equipment, which is great. My favorite was we had a First Amendment law professor from the University of Chicago who was doing a class and at the last minute needed to have a space, and she's like, I didn't know what to do, and then I remembered I live in Northbrook, and we ended up being able to get her set up because we only have a 1-day waiting period, so people can reserve the room just a day in advance. And she was able to come and still have the class with all of her law students online and in person and talk about First Amendment, which was really cool. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly right now, and she's going to give everyone a quick tour of the room and the new fun stuff.
So, thanks, Kate. You will certainly recognize a lot of these slides. I'd like to thank Linda Vering, our marketing and communications manager, and her team for putting together the slideshow that we had at the ribbon cutting. So if you were able to attend that or saw any of the posts on social media, you'll recognize some of the slides from tonight because they made them for that event. We started this project shortly after COVID, when people were still wanting to have options to engage with the library without coming in physically. And we predicted that that might continue. And we have certainly seen that to be true. We often get asked if there is a virtual or live stream option, not only for the board meeting, but also for a lot of our events. And so we had been using an OWL camera and a Plantronic speaker and many, many cables to make that work in various meeting room spaces throughout the library. Those things are still in existence because unfortunately not every room has been upgraded as beautifully as this one has. And available both for library events as well as outside room bookings. But now the technology in this room has been upgraded because what we were seeing for me, what the primary concern was when we were having events in this room, it was really difficult to hear what was going on. One thing is, with the size of this room, we cannot provide amplification via microphone. Like our audiovisual folks are like, the sound will just bounce off, it'll sound terrible. So we're relying on the power of our own voices. And whenever we were trying to do anything in here with the OWL video camera and the Plantronic speaker, it was really difficult to hear, which of course impacts the accessibility of the room. And so now that has been approved. If you look up, there are 4 speakers in the ceiling. There is sound dampening audio, which for folks sitting on the far end, the people that are not here physically here in the building, but watching on Zoom or Google Meet, the sound dampening really helps them be able to hear better. We also added 6 in-ceiling microphones, which you can see there's a green light on the ceiling here. That's where all the microphones kind of come together and they pick up throughout the room. And an assistive listening system, which is built into the room and plays through a device that folks can wear. I have a picture of it later that I'll show. So we have noticed marked improvement on the audio since we've been in the room. You may remember at the November board meeting, the audio was cutting out quite a bit, and so that has been addressed by our vendor. We have a new mixing board in place, and that is going very well. So we'll see how tonight goes. This will be a real good stress test. We also upgraded visual technology. You'll see on the wall, there's 2 webcams, one in the back of the room, kind of behind where Becky is sitting, and then one up here in the front next to the clock. We still have the same 96-inch LCD monitor that we had before. We were able to repurpose it We are being told it is at end of life, but we're trying to get more life out of it. And we've added a touch panel control to the wall, which is one thing that we are still working on programming with our vendor. With all the iterations that we had, fixing the sound mixer, the programming on the touch panel continues to change. So folks can also book when they book this room to use a DVD player, the podium that we see here, tables, chairs, laptop, and a whiteboard. So all of those are available to folks who want to book this room and use it. And I do have an example here. This will be a little bit of an inception moment. So we can hear in this room how the speakers sound and also hear how the recording picked up at the November board meeting.
Warn us who's going to be talking.
It's the start of the meeting.
Come on.
So that is what it looks like and sounds like on the far end. It is a little bit different from the OWL camera. The OWL camera has technology in it that allows it to pick up on who the speaker is and focus in on. And that might be something that people want to continue to use for internal library events and or outside room bookings, depending on what the function of their event is. These are much more stationary. We do have remotes where we can move them, but we're not going to be providing like a director who's going to be working through camera angles throughout a room booking. So they will be stationary. I always mess that up. Now you have to watch it again. Excuse me. So as I mentioned, you can book the room in Communico. You just have to have a Northbrook Library card and be over the age of 18. You can find that site at northbrook.info/meeting rooms. And there are many different uses to the room. I know I'll recall, we had a gigantic table in the middle of this room. It was, we were very limited on what we could do with this space because of that table. So we have removed that, and we're currently using the same furniture that we use in our meeting rooms, which also is nearing end of life. And and so now there's a lot more capacity for doing different types of programs, including theater seating for lectures or small performances, different angles that we can set up for meetings and discussions, as well as a classroom layout for small classes. And we have already had a technology class in here, and it worked out really well. Oh, I've lost my captions. As I mentioned, accessibility was a big part of this project. So this is what the hearing loops look like. We also have the ability, as you can see, through either Google Slides or PowerPoint to caption folks as they're speaking live, which is something in library events that we're moving toward as much as possible. And I know that a lot of outside room bookings also like to have that option. So this is pretty seamless. As you saw, I just toggled on captions and people can see that. And then, of course, the improved sound quality definitely enhances the accessibility for folks who have hearing issues. All of this was made possible by a grant that I wrote to the Northbrook Civic Foundation, so we want to thank them for that generous donation and for the lovely ribbon cutting ceremony that we had on January 6th. And at this point, I'm wondering if anybody has any questions.
Very impressive. I think it's going to be fabulous for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see what the staff and what the public think to do in this room. I think there's a lot of possibilities that I haven't even thought of, and so it'll be really neat to see how it's used over the next several years.
That's great. And the quality, and despite having to listen to myself, the quality in the video sound is amazing. I know we all also had feelings about the owl and it pivoting to look at us, but I also think from an accessibility perspective, not having that motion during a meeting and the constant movement is helpful.
Great. Yeah, that's a good point.
I'd also like to point out that we did start this project. This project ended up taking longer than we expected because of multiple supply chain issues and issues with different vendors. And Kelly very seamlessly continued to work with the vendors, keep Civic updated, to keep this moving forward amidst a lot of other things. And I think that this is, we all, you hear about like, oh yeah, there were supply chain issues, and you don't think about like, well, it didn't maybe impact me personally, but it did impact this project. And so I think it was due to Kelly's dedication and working with Anna to keep working through all those obstacles, because we knew that this would be something that is important, that the community would find value in. And of course, with the generous support of the Civic Foundation, which is so appreciated. But I just want to give, credit where credit is due for navigating all of those. She made it sound like it was all very, very simple. And and when you look at that 50,000-foot view, it was, but there were a fair number of roadblocks as we were emerging from the pandemic and just with experiencing different things that we had to wait on, or that, prices were increasing dramatically, and do we need to rethink that? So I think we've come to a place where we have this space now that will be very multifunctional for many different audiences for many years to come. So
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
The only thing I'm gonna miss is the owl that when we had to cover it.
Yes.
And the paranoia that it created.
The owl
I was
cozy.
like, is it actually done?
is it off?
Is it like, yeah, I know.
I sleep better at night knowing the owl's not watching.
We do still have the tea cozy, so if we wanted to ever bring up the owl and not have it plugged in, but just put it on the table to bring back old memories.
Bring back memories.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Moving on to board member reports. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share?
I just wanted to say I very much enjoyed the ribbon cutting. I thought it was great to learn more about the room and to see so many folks here. And equally, I very much enjoyed serving pizza to the students. They were delightful, polite, said thank you, and we're very grateful for the pizza.
I would agree. I was very impressed with
Yeah.
how polite and appreciative all of those students were. It was great.
Stephanie did a great job, including an emergency Costco run on the
Yes.
last day because they ate her out of all the snacks. And so
Yes.
there was a pinch hit to get some more additional snacks and sodas.
It's 100, yes.
Hungry.
They were
buggers.
very hungry. There were a lot of hard finals this year, I heard.
I was also going to mention, I attended Jill's program on January 6th that featured Jan Peterson Hincapi talking about having a positive mindset. Jan used to be the director of the Park District. I might be making that up here in Northbrook. It's been a while. I could be making that up. She did something with parks. Don't quote me on any of this. But it was a lovely start to the year to hear more about the benefits of having a positive mindset. And after people had registered, Jill also facilitated having tea served at the event. And so it was a very cozy evening in the Pollock Room. And it was just a nice way to come together with the community. And there were no pigeons.
Which made it even cozier.
I'm sorry.
Cozier
about
for me.
it.
No,
I am
no.
ashamed, but, you know.
Easier to have a positive
Teasable,
mindset.
Yes, yeah. Anything else? Moving into unfinished business. Up first, we have an update on the FEIN and payroll changes.
That is me.
Becky's gonna give us that update.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So, as you already know, as of January 1st, the Village of Northbrook no longer handles payroll processing for the library. I know you know this, but I think it's worth repeating. So in preparation for January 1st, our payroll transition team consisting of myself, Kate, Anna, and lots of support from others, we worked diligently to implement and migrate our payroll system to ADP. I want to say that we are deeply grateful to all of our staff for their cooperation throughout this transition. This includes them setting up their accounts, verifying their information, and entering hours into the new timekeeping system. Our staff's attention to detail and their adaptability with all the changes has been really commendable. Since the transition, we have completed not one, but 2 payroll cycles, one for January 15th and one for January 17th. And I want to give special kudos to Anna Amon, our Director of Finance and Operations, for her tireless efforts and dedication. She has devoted extra hours to ensure that all the payroll details, this includes hours, deductions, tax withholdings, that they were all processed accurately. I learned that, in spite of Anna's impressive career, she has not processed payroll before. So really, this has been like a new transition for her, for all of us, and we're deeply grateful. Here comes to the however, the but piece. Despite our thorough preparation and assurances from ADP that we processed payroll correctly, we found out that during the January 15th pay date, there were some staff who signed up for direct deposit that did not receive their funds in their accounts as they expected. We immediately raised the issue with ADP, and they have yet to identify the issue. We've made it very clear to ADP that this situation is unacceptable, and we are not okay with staff not getting paid when they should have. The fact that it was not resolved within 24 hours is even more unacceptable to us, and we have communicated our disappointment to them with both the error and their lack of urgency in resolving the issue. To ensure that our staff are compensated promptly, we have arranged, with Anna's support, for live checks to be issued to all affected staff. These checks are being overnighted to us, I think from the East Coast, and they are coming by tomorrow. There are about 18 individuals who are impacted. So, we have 100-something staff, but still 18 is too high. One is too many, 18 is definitely too many. And the affected staff have been notified of these plans, and we're very grateful for their flexibility. We're actively working with ADP to address the root cause of the problem so we can prevent future occurrences. And rest assured that we are holding ADP accountable, as the timely and accurate payment of our staff is our highest priority.
And as the board knows, we did have a very abbreviated timeline with this because the village was not willing to extend us some additional time when they told us that they would no longer be processing our payroll. That certainly did put a crunch on things. We made that very clear to ADP, who assured us that there would be no issues. Obviously, that is not the case. It also was not helped by the fact that some of the data that was given to us by the village and given to ADP was inaccurate, and we had to go back multiple times to get accurate information on our staff and from the payroll system, because we did not have direct access to the payroll system. So the village had to run reports. So this is not ideal and not okay, and is certainly consuming a lot of time. But I think for Anna and Becky and I, the biggest and most hurtful thing is that we have staff that were supposed to be paid yesterday and we're not. And that is, as I said to ADP yesterday, the trust that has been broken with that is going to take a tremendous Herculean effort on their part to fix. And that I look forward to hearing what their plans are to make restitution on this, because this is something that staff will certainly remember, and I certainly will remember. They have not yet gotten back to us on what that might look like, but I am very much looking forward to ensuring that we did not use taxpayer dollars to pay for something that we had no choice in switching to, but to hold them accountable to make sure that all of those dollars are being spent responsibly, and that the people that are working tirelessly every day are getting the money that they are owed when they are owed it. It was disappointing, their lack of urgency around this. And so,
Is ADP, that, I assume they're the provider, they're servicing the village as well? No, okay,
no, the village, it uses BSNA,
okay.
which did not integrate with our HRIS, which because
Okay.
we used to do it manually with the village, like we used to just send them a spreadsheet.
Got it.
It was, yeah, BSNA also offers other things that, so no,
Okay.
they do not
Okay.
use the village, but it's,
Has ADP provided a time frame in which they expect to diagnose the problem so we can be sure it doesn't happen again in 2 weeks?
I expected an answer by end of day today, which we did not receive, but they told us that they were still working on it, but that their biggest priority, because they said, well, you said your biggest priority is making sure staff got paid, and I said, correct. And Anna has been putting in, well, just a ridiculous amount of time trying to figure this out, and as says Becky, they have not given us a timeline, so tomorrow morning we will be following back up. The most important thing was getting staff paid. That is happening. Not in an acceptable time frame, but it is happening finally. And then tomorrow we will be pressing them. And I have gotten not only our implementation specialist and speaking with her boss, but also his boss and his boss's boss, and have been working on an email and asking to speak with them, because this is,
No.
it's not okay
Not okay.
in any way, shape, or form.
No.
So, Becky also did not mention this because this feels minor now, but on January 2nd, when we reopened after New Year's and time clocks started, over half the staff did not have access to them, which we had tested to make sure everyone did. They made a change on January 1st. They didn't tell us. And so then half the staff that tried to log in could not log their time. And we're like, so staff were already feeling like, what the heck? As they should, as we are. So it is, yeah.
ADP is such a big company. I hope that they have the right resources to appreciate, public libraries and.
Correct. We know of other libraries that work with them. I worked with them at my last library. We migrated to them and had no issues. I do think that this is the type of thing that being very persistent will eventually yield us what we need in terms of support. And I enjoy being very persistent until we make sure that we are getting the support that we are due with the money that we are spending from taxpayers to make sure that our staff can get paid. I was trying to say that
I'm
diplomatically.
sure it
I
will
don't know if I
eventually
did.
sort itself, but it is not a great way to come out of the gate for a new vendor, and they're not covering
And what
themselves in
it
glory.
makes the
I will
worst time of
say.
year to
Yeah,
have that happen.
absolutely. Yeah.
But great job to the team, because you had a
Yeah.
very short time frame to
Must be
work
very
with them.
stressful.
And I reiterate the appreciation to the staff for the flexibility. It's, I mean,
Yeah,
obviously
staff
they
have
should
been
not,
so gracious.
right.
Really,
Above and
just-
beyond, right.
Was Becky, the 18 impacted staff, that's not 100% of direct deposit staff though, correct? So it was just a portion of direct deposit staff?
Yeah.
It's even weirder.
Yeah, so
Correct.
there's no rhyme or reason
There's,
to.
Yeah.
we're trying to locate a
Okay.
pattern and we are still stumped.
Okay.
But yeah, only direct deposit staff, the staff who normally get checks, that went through without a
Okay.
hitch.
Oh, so it is all of the direct deposit staff?
No.
Oh, 18, most of our staff receive direct deposit.
Yeah.
There are some staff who always get checks written from us,
So,
live checks, they
yeah.
get their checks on.
About
15.
2% of staff receive live checks,
Okay.
and
And they got
98%.
theirs.
They got theirs.
Okay.
And
And
so
so
the-
about
the people who
20%
got
of the 98%
There
you go.
receive.
Okay.
Math,
I was
right.
gonna say.
Yeah,
That makes no
piece of
sense
math
at
right
all.
there, right.
Yeah, so it sure doesn't.
Do they all use the same bank?
They do not.
Okay.
Yeah,
There was
that's
no-
what I was thinking.
All right,
That
you know
is
what?
my detective.
I don't know that we're gonna be able to probably solve.
I'm out.
Oh, no, we don't need Anna and Becky and I were having this similar conversation. It's like,
Do
well,
their last
maybe it
semester
says-
was the same? Okay.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Straight to.
Yeah, no, they're not all in the
Not
same.
surprised by that. Okay. Anything else on FEIN and payroll changes? Okay, moving on to the update on the facilities management RFP.
I will give that. We received one response to our RFP, and we had another vendor ask us a bunch of questions before they could submit a response, and we responded to his questions, and then the company said they did not feel that they were the right fit for what we were looking for. So we have one company to look at, and we are in the process of evaluating the RFP. We're gonna have a meeting with them next week, try to iron out some questions that we have for them, and then we will give a recommendation and our findings in February.
You know, with all your free time.
Yeah. I made a really pretty rubric. Sorry, Maura, I forgot. I know you're not a huge rubric fan, but
It's just a personal thing.
Any questions for Anna? Okay, moving into new business, the water leak of January 7th, 2020. That should be 2025.
it was only a week ago.
You should, it was 2025.
Oh, it was 2025. I put 2024 on here. Sorry, guys. We did not have a water leak in 2024.
So I'm gonna talk about that too. So we learned after the water started falling that it was our steam boiler that had malfunctioned. It sent water into the ductwork rather than steam. And then that water went into the ducts and leaked onto the second floor in the two areas, one in the digitization room and the media lab, or more the digitization room, and then the other
No,
area.
more the media lab.
More to the media lab, sorry. And then the other area was the bank of computers and the little computer rooms near the nonfiction section and the copiers. And so right now, what we've done is we've shut down the steam boiler, which is fine. We called the insurance company, they've sent out an adjuster. We called a remediation company, they came out and they cut away drywall and removed carpet and said that our facilities staff did a great job taking down ceiling tiles, drying up the areas, putting the blowers on stuff right away. And we do need to shout out to District 28 because they let us borrow some of their carpet blowers to help us keep things dry. But the facilities team was great, and the remediation company came in, cut drywall, removed carpet, and got us ready for getting I think this week, by tomorrow, we're gonna be able to take the blowers and the humidifiers down, and then we'll be able to call somebody to come in and do the repair work. And then we had a company called Strike Force come out. They are an electronic
Because it's such a fun name.
claim investigator, and they came out earlier this week and looked at all of the equipment and are gonna be getting us a report next week to let us know if.
They work with the insurance company, so their report will be part of the insurance company's report.
So, yeah, so once we get all of that information, we'll start the repair work, and then we are going to work with the engineering company who designed the steam boiler, the boiler manufacturer, the HVAC company, and the Dan and Tom, our facility managers, to try to figure out what our next step is.
So we've identified the what, but not the why. But
Or
of course,
the how to
fixing.
fix it.
Or the how to fix it. And so like the immediate issue, of course, was making sure that nothing else was damaged and addressing the immediate crisis. So now that is done, in between some of the other project stuff that we've just mentioned, we will be addressing this.
We should also thank our HVAC company. Thermo Systems did a great job.
was
Like, the
great.
gentleman came out, the technician came out, and he worked Tuesday.
He came out Tuesday
And then
afternoon, yeah.
he, with a little pushing, he was able to come back out Wednesday, and he figured out what the problem was Wednesday morning, and then got the building open once we figured out what was
Yeah.
wrong.
It was really thanks to him that we were able to pinpoint what the issue was so we could get the
So,
building
but
open
Thermo
as quickly as
Systems did a
possible.
great job as well.
Yeah. And staff also, the staff during what I like to call the rainforest in the library moment was amazing. Everyone immediately started pitching in and like shelvers were like, what's going on? And people just came and we were moving equipment. So we're hopeful that we've saved most of the equipment because people move so quickly and in addressing the issue, and staff really, they were amazing. I wish we have video to show everyone of just how quickly and responsively and everyone was helping each other and addressing it, so that we hopefully reduce the amount of damage that otherwise would have occurred, so.
Imagine if this happened like overnight.
Oh, I know I have. Nimesh, you're in my 2 a.m. thoughts.
Well, thank you to everyone who responded. I know we're going to tour the areas impacted. I did want to flag that, and this was a little unusual, that the social media posts about it, rather than having a second post later, they updated the first post, and I don't know that that's intuitive for people, because it said we'll update when the library is open, or they just changed the caption on the
legit.
first post.
Oh, that's different, that's,
Yeah, so
I'll
and
mention
that seemed
that.
out of the ordinary for the library in general, but it doesn't push the update into people's feeds to know the library's gonna be closed for the rest
Okay.
of the day, or it's
Yeah,
opening at
I'll
1
find out,
p.m.
because that feels
Yeah,
weird.
it was a little strange, as somebody
Yeah,
who didn't have I had the opposite problem at home and didn't have any water and had been hoping to work at the library.
Where we have lots of water, just not where we wanted it.
You took all the water
I'm
and
so sorry.
the northeast side of Northbrook had none. So, but anyway, just my own
Okay.
feedback from that. Otherwise, I think the staff did a great job and the communication was very strong.
Yes.
Tour time?
Yeah, so we're gonna just do a pause.
Yep.
And we're gonna go show everyone. Our guests are welcome to join us. They're gonna show you the areas that were impacted by the rainforest and the library.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for our tour of the library. Thanks to the staff who engaged with us and answered our questions. Moving on to meeting room policy and procedure review. We teed this conversation up in November. We've decided that it's time to look at the library's meeting room policy. So to clarify before we jump into this, we're not actually going to be discussing the policy tonight. We are going to discuss the process for reviewing the policies. So Kate included in the packets a proposed review process and timeline. So hopefully you've each had a chance to look at that. Please note that that should also be 2025.
Yeah, we're definitely in 2025. I'm not suggesting we go back
We're
in
not gonna
time.
go back in time. We're not interested in that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we thought would be helpful for this group to discuss is the structure of how this group will come together, how we would identify stakeholders beyond those who were here tonight and have volunteered their time, as well as how we would facilitate the conversation. We do know that we need a couple of board members to be involved, and we're looking at, of course, 2 because of Open Meeting Act. No one is going to be asked to volunteer tonight. Especially with board members not here, I want to be sensitive to that and give people the opportunity to think about if they want this additional commitment and to make sure everybody has an opportunity to engage. But it's important that we look at this to make sure that our policy is serving our community and is aligned with the strategic plan and the values that we laid out as part of the strategic planning process. What did I miss? Great. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to review this or skim it while I was talking. What are people's thoughts on bringing a group together and how we would begin to identify individuals to serve on that group?
I think having a stakeholder group that goes beyond board and staff is key and very important. What were your thoughts about how large this group should be?
Well, if it's too large,
Yeah.
then it becomes unwieldy.
That's why I asked.
So I was thinking that a total of 10 to 12 people, including board and staff, right? Because I also very much think it's important to have our attorney, who also happens to be a Northbrook resident, which is very helpful, and to make sure that we have representation from different viewpoints in the community, that we are hearing from the different groups of stakeholders that have shared with us some of the barriers and challenges that they see with our existing policies. I also think it's important that we have an outside facilitator.
Yep.
Because while I or our attorney could facilitate it, I think that it's really important, given the volume of comments we've heard around our policies, that we have an outside person that can come in and ensure a, open and transparent and mediated conversation. So if the board decides to go this direction, I have a couple ideas of moderators that I think would, that are not from Northbrook, that are outside, but that have, facilitation backgrounds that would be able to navigate, hopefully having a constructive conversation with different groups.
I've been doing a lot of thinking about how one selects for a stakeholder group. It's wonderful when people volunteer, and I think that should absolutely be, we should be grateful for that. I think we need to ensure balance, though, and so, I know when I've had to do this kind of thing, it's a sort of an odd mix of volunteers and also thinking through, is there someone we'd like to tap and ask?
Yeah.
Would you like to join this? Particularly if we feel like there's a view that did not naturally sort of find its way to the group. I don't know how other people feel about how to select, because if you have 2 board members, that takes it down to 8.
Yeah.
And the
Or
lawyer.
10.
And our attorney. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so you don't have a lot of.
And I wanted to make this a more cohesive group, but there is, of course, always an option of having different, so if we wanted to have a larger community group, a larger staff, that we could have those disparate groups meet independently and then compile everything. But I think that there is tremendous value in having a group that has those different perspectives all in one room.
Is one shape of this could be you have your stakeholder group, and then perhaps during this, there is one opportunity for sort of a public meeting? It's on there, okay, never mind, okay. That's what happens when you skim.
Yeah, no, there's a lot.
Well, it also says 2024. so-
Okay, well.
Yeah, you were thinking that this was a last year thing that we did, so I get it, yeah.
But
So,
Janet,
But to
oh,
go,
sorry.
oh, no, go ahead, please.
I was thinking along the lines of like a general survey to also possibly narrow like some of the topics that might come out of that group. So that way you get
Possibly,
a cross-sectional feedback from the community if, not an overwhelming survey, but
Yeah.
for those that are interested and
Yeah.
vocal. So that way, and then like some portion of that group kind of pulls that in if there are certain topics that make sense from a survey standpoint. That way you just get feedback that's broad.
we need to know what we were asking about,
Yeah.
and I think, I don't know that we necessarily know that. The other piece that can be a little challenging sometimes with surveys, although they are designed to elicit feedback for consideration by the stakeholder group and then ultimately the board, I have found that depending on the topic, often those who participate sort of believe they're casting a vote, and that the majority that was what will happen, and that's really not what it's designed to do, but it's you gotta be very careful how you communicate the purpose and use of that survey data, so.
I would also add with the survey piece, I think that my hope is that we create space for conversation. And I think that surveys are very much more of a one-way communication vehicle.
Yeah.
And I think that there is clearly a lot of strong feelings in our community around different topics. And I would like us to be able to get into some of the nuances, because I think that is one of the things that has been, as we see show up, right, in social media and other places where things are painted with a very broad brush. And so it would be great to be able to dig in and have more nuanced and detailed conversations and hear more about people's perspectives. I know in talking with patrons, when I've had the opportunity to talk one-on-one with people, it allows for a greater depth of understanding and helps to, I think, build community better. But I also, if the board wants, as a group, to do a survey, we
I'm
will
gonna
do whatever
second
you
what
want.
you're saying, Kate. I
Yeah.
think one of the beyond reviewing the meeting policy and making any needed changes, I think one of the highest values of such a group is to have folks, not the library, but residents who feel very differently about these topics, speaking to each other. And I think, to your point, there's a lot of broad brushstrokes on social media. There's also a lot, many times folks really do not understand the nuances and are making judgments based on very little information. And having some of those folks in a room where they can really delve into the issues is of great value. No.
Maura and Nimesh, I think you each had your hand.
Yes, so I was thinking, let me get back my train, regarding the survey, I think one of the problems with the survey, even if it is, and I'm confident that it would be done, with, soliciting everyone's opinion.
Oh, yeah,
I think it's helpful to have the discussion come from the community, sort of be a little bit more organic, rather than having the library sort of like say, this is the agenda, not that they would be saying this is the
Right.
agenda, but I think when you start by saying, what do you think, instead of what do you think about A, B, and C, it's a little bit more, you get to, I think, share more of the ownership of leading the discussion, which I think would be helpful in this instance.
So we're talking about 6 people from the community. Is that what
I mean,
we're
that
talking
is
about
the
here?
number that is in my head. And this is, I mean, I am not like a trained, like, right, I'm a librarian, so we can adjust any of this.
I guess I just wonder how we're gonna ensure that these people are true stakeholders that are representative of what they're supposed to represent. Like, are we gonna be, like, how are we gonna pick these 6 people? I just find that almost impossible to do.
I wonder if there's an opportunity to use some of the data for not all 6 roles, but of people who have reserved rooms, to go back to that group of people and say, you've engaged with Northbrook Public Library by reserving a meeting room, we're looking at our meeting room policy and would be interested in hearing from you. And maybe it's looking at someone who's reserved a lot of, it, and it doesn't have, but that's a group that we know has used the policy and at least should have maybe read it before they booked a room. I'm not judging. I
We
don't know
ask
that I
them
would
and
have.
ask them to read it and sign
Sure.
off that they've read it.
And I don't, like I said, I don't think that's the answer for all 6 people, but I do think that that's a group that
Sure.
is easily identified. I also wonder, as we were talking about the survey, and it doesn't sound like there's cohesiveness around whether we should do that or not, but if there's an opportunity to go back to the survey data from Fast Forward Libraries to see if there were any comments about meeting rooms and our policies and to comb through what we've already received.
100%. Those surveys are all anonymous though, so we wouldn't be able to.
I'm not saying for
Oh, yeah, yeah.
stakeholders, but
Just-
instead
just
of
for-
research,
yes, correct.
like,
Good idea.
Oh,
we all
gotcha,
get
gotcha.
too many
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
surveys all the time, and
Correct.
like you can't buy
Absolutely.
anything at Gap without a survey. So,
Yeah.
sorry, thinking about my email inbox right now. But if that's an opportunity to take some general feedback from the community
Yes.
that we've already been gifted,
Right.
and look at how that might apply.
And I would say that we also planned to, or at least one of my thoughts was, we would also comb through the patron comments we've gotten, say, looking back over the last 5 years, anything related to meeting rooms, we would share and aggregate and say, this is the comments, this is what the themes that are arising. Because I think it's important to not just rely, like you said, Jamie, like, if we're asking 6 people to represent 35,000, how are we gonna actually do that? So that's another, I think multiple data points is a helpful way of doing that.
The outside facilitator that we've discussed, who would that be? Like,
Yeah.
how do you go about finding that person?
So I was thinking of a couple different people. One of the people I was thinking of is Biz Lindsay Ryan, who has worked with us and done EDI work and is a trained facilitator, used to teach at DePaul, and also was on the Evanston School Board for over a decade, and so is well-versed in units of local government, working with communities, helping to bridge and have difficult conversations. She has deep understanding of our library, having worked with us and done trainings with us over the last 8 years, and has that understanding of how local government works, which I think is also really critically important. We also have a number of people in the library field that have trained facilitation certifications. Amanda Standifer, who worked with us on our strategic plan, is just one of them, but there are also several others, not that we've worked with here, but that have an understanding of libraries. I've also reached out to the American Library Association Office of Intellectual Freedom and asked them if they have a list of any trained facilitators, and they provided me with a list. I have not gone through that list yet, but I also have that list as well. I think the key thing is that it's someone who needs to understand how to facilitate conversations with people that might have opposing viewpoints, as well as how people have a deep understanding of libraries, units of local government, and the First Amendment. And so those were all of the criteria I was kind of applying. And if you have other suggestions for facilitators too, I'm happy
I
to.
don't have any.
Oh.
So what I wrote down was sort of the First Amendment issues, and it would be helpful, I think, for,
Yeah.
I mean, I think for all the board members and for whoever's gonna serve on it, and maybe just for the whole committee, to sort of have some,
Yes.
like, just sort of like,
So-
here's a, like,
Yes.
First Amendment
and
101, yeah.
Julie Tappendorf, who is
Okay.
our attorney, who is an equity partner at Ansel Glink, and who specializes in the First Amendment and units of local government, and has been, working with us on some of these topics. She and I have talked about the need to have kind of an educational component to make sure that people understand that we heard a lot of people like, you should, even from staff, you should just cancel and not have this. Like, that is not something that we would ever consider. This is something that we absolutely have a constitutional obligation to uphold and want to uphold. So this, she would do kind of a primer. We were not to like do a spoiler alert, but also thinking that that would be really valuable in once she's developed that, to do that with the full board. While you guys are all very aware of the First Amendment issues, we think it's always a good idea to remind everyone and use it as an opportunity to deepen all of our learning. So she would be providing that as well.
And also, zooming out a little bit, the First Amendment thing obviously feels pressing in light of recent events, but the policy as a whole just needs to be reviewed.
Of course.
And so there were other components that we wanted to look at and to make
Right.
sure are consistent with our values and are in alignment with our plan of inclusion and where community happens.
And I think just having a comparison, because we always ask this of what
Yeah.
other local libraries are doing,
Yeah.
is always helpful moving forward.
Correct. And
And
our,
it's always provided. so-
and that is something that I a lot of the policies mirror ours.
Okay.
Because Ansel Glink is a very well-known law firm, because I do a lot of presenting, our policies are reviewed and looked at quite frequently, so you will
Borrowed, okay.
you will
Yeah.
see a lot of
Okay.
similar
Okay.
language, and I know Julie is ready and willing to talk in depth about different policies and the different lenses that they use to look at things, and I want to do the same as well, because I do think that it is, and this kind of gets back to Jamie's point, I think it's critically important that we be thinking about how are we serving everyone in our community while upholding our values. And to me, it is critically important that we ensure that with any policy review, we are applying multiple lenses to it, because we recognize that people hold different identities and they're looking at things differently. And our job is to represent everyone in our community while upholding those values that we've said are important, and also upholding, local, state, and national laws. So we have done that with policy in the past, and there is always an opportunity to refresh and refine. So I think this is a unique opportunity, I think, for us to really get community stakeholders more involved in our policy revision. I'm just excited that people are excited about policy, because I love policy, and that is not usually the case, so.
You might wanna, you talked about the First Amendment sort of primer, but for the group that forms,
Yeah.
Kelly's done a lot of good work with respect to just Jaffe security and what the state of security looks like.
Correct.
And so just so that they have a primer for, well, what is the library like today? What are the potential
Correct.
plans? Just because that runs
Yeah.
in parallel with this. a little bit.
100%. So I have kind of, Julie and I have kind of brainstormed kind of like a little mini, like, what would the first meeting even look like if we went this route? And that is absolutely, and thank you for bringing that up, Nimesh, because I hadn't mentioned that. The security piece is so critical when we are getting threats against the library, people threatening to harm either the building, the people in the building, that those are significant concerns that we also need to address. And they are not at odds with the First Amendment, but absolutely need to be considered right alongside of it to ensure that anyone in the community can feel that they can come in and have a safe and welcoming experience at the library. Yeah. So it sounds like maybe we need a larger group?
Maybe it could be a titch larger. Do you think we could go to 14 without
Yeah.
sort of?
I think that gets a little
I
hard
mean-
to, I think it's hard with that big of a group. I think it's hard for people to have.
It's also
Have
hard
a
for me to
voice.
envision expanding the group before we know what interest in participating looks like.
Yes.
We have very
Yes.
lofty goals here,
Yes.
and we may not.
I think we could get hundreds of, no, fair
I'm just
point,
thinking about
fair
our
point.
strategic plan community survey
Right.
goal that we
Right.
didn't. Anyway,
We still blew the
we did, but
out
we
of the
didn't
water.
reach the number that we set. So
No, my number
I'm-
I was told was unrealistic.
Yeah, I'm just trying to manage your expectations.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think if there, and to Maura's point, like, if there is a large outpouring of interest, then we can look at how do we engage with people who want to share their thoughts and
Then I think you can have a
wisdom.
meeting
Yes.
and so like there could be a
Yes.
separate meeting just for public comments.
But expanding the group without knowing if there's genuine interest in something that's, especially something that's gonna last several months.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I suppose folks might want to know, well, how many meetings are you talking? Yeah.
Right.
Are you willing to- And when are they, and that kind of thing, yeah. So,
And we can't answer that until we know who is in. It does seem like everyone is generally interested in taking this path and going this route. Does that?
Yes.
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Do
Great.
you feel like you have what you need to start a plan for identifying stakeholders or soliciting stakeholder involvement?
I do.
Okay.
I do feel like I have that, and I think I will also flesh out more where some of those additional data points that we will look at are, because I think that that will also be important, and knowing, I didn't want to spend too much time planning if the board's like, we don't want to do it this way, but knowing that you do, I will work on this and we'll reach out to Julie and the facilitator, and see about, some of it will be based on people's availability, and then we can kind of dive into getting this going. I do want to be mindful of the timeline, because I don't want this to be a thing that is like, oh, well, a year from now. Like, I do want to keep this pretty tight, which I think is very reasonable to do, but I don't, I don't think it should be more than a few meetings, right? It shouldn't be, oh, we're gonna meet every week for the next 6 months. Like, no, this should be an opportunity to share, and then we should be taking action, and then we should be bringing something to the board, so that this isn't something that like the library is just talking about. There needs to be a opportunity for sharing feedback and for us to hear from the community and to look at things, but not at the point of like never actually finalizing. We need to, I would say, by the end of this fiscal year at the very latest, which is April 30th, we need to have this wrapped up,
Sounds great.
is my plan.
Members of the
Assuming
board
no
should also think
water.
about if they're interested in serving. I'd like to have individual conversations with Jay and Barbara because they couldn't be here tonight, just to bring them up to speed. And then we'll put out a call for board member involvement. So don't jump your lines and start sending emails. If you already did, recall the email.
I'll just pretend I didn't see it, that you guys sent it to me.
Anything else on the meeting room policy and procedure review?
Can I add just one additional thing, which is more on the procedure side, which is where I really feel the staff come into play, because the policy is, of course, decided and determined by the board, which sets how you want these to work. But the procedure, I feel also there is a huge opportunity here for us to rethink how the procedure is handled, and that is the operationalizing of the policy. So while we will be bringing a policy to the board to review and hopefully approve, we will also share the procedures, even those are a staff operating thing, because I think that the two, in order for this to be really as functional as it should be, which I think is pretty functional now, but which can use some refreshing, I want the board to be aware of kind of the full circle, so that you understand not just the policy piece, but also can see how we plan to operationalize it in the procedures. So that will also definitely be part of this, but which you will not have to vote on. You can just review it and be like, oh, that sounds cool. Hopefully.
It's the coolest procedure ever.
Coolest procedure ever.
We do not need to move into closed session this evening. Agenda building for our February meeting. On the list, we have the facilities management RFP recommendation, fiscal year 26 draft budget presentation. It's our favorite time of year. The quarterly strategic plan report and executive director quarterly goal check-in. The consent agenda will include detailed statement of all receipts and expenditures for the previous 6 months and talking about the executive director evaluation process. Is there anything anyone else would like to add at this time to next month's agenda?
I should have put on here that we will, of course, have an update on, with the meeting room policy review.
All right.
Probably another update on the insurance breakdown of,
Yeah, I will likely just include that in my report and not as a separate, but yes. Yeah.
Anything else? Great, then we will adjourn at 8:20 PM.